you're in the line of fire no matter what. I mean, you're sitting at your desk and you're hearing somebody down the hall screaming at God knows what, and they swing open their door to their office, and you're like,
holy crap, what do I do? I'm just gonna look down, I'm gonna look busy, I'm gonna get my butt on the phone.
What's up, everyone? Thank you so much for joining me today. And in today's video, I want to talk about some of those horror stories. Yes, this is a crazy legal industry, and some of you may be wondering why I call it the crazy legal industry. And it's because you kind of got to be crazy to stay in it. So I want to talk about some of those horror stories today, things that I've learned throughout my journey. And several weeks ago, I talked, about this whole mental health thing and my journey through that. And at the end of that video, I told you about, a disease that I'm suffering from and have been suffering from throughout my entire career. And I want to talk about that today, but you have to stay tuned to the end of the video because I'm going to talk about it in the end. If you were excited about today's video and listening to my horror stories and all that came with my legal journey, then click that thumbs up button below. Consider subscribing. You can always unsubscribe later if you don't like it. And let's go ahead and dive into things today. All right, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Misty Murray. I am a litigation paralegal and founder of Arrow Consultants. And today's setup is a little bit different because my video is out of commission right now. And so I'm using my FaceTime camera. Here we go. First thing that I learned in my early 20s was that you are quite dispensable as a paralegal. Now, there are paralegals who are not, and I'll talk about that here in a minute, but when I was in my early 20s, I was very nonchalant at that point about my career. I really wasn't paying attention to networking. Social media didn't exist at that time. We are talking about the late 90s here. So when I was in my early 20s, I really, wasn't focused about my career too much. I was single, I was ready to mingle, and I was okay with status quo. And being okay with status quo taught me how dispensable I really was. So I had emergency surgery for my gallbladder because I had a large stone lodged in the neck of my gallbladder. And during that process, there were some scans that were done. The doctor noticed some shadows on one of my kidneys. I got diagnosed with renal cell carcinoma in my right kidney. And it ultimately ended up being a misdiagnosis, thank goodness. But it ended up being a really, really, really bad, horrible kidney infection. I started going through therapy for that, through treatment for that, and it made me really, really sick. And during the process of going through that, I was fired. And at the time, it was, it was the right to work state. They could fire me for basically anything. And so they fired me, and my daughter was 2 months old. I was a single mom, but luckily I did network well enough where people within the legal industry found out about that. And I had a job the following week. So it really wasn't, that long of a period that I didn't have a job. But during that process, I learned how dispensable I was. And I said to myself that I would never be in that situation again. I was never going to be dispensable like that again. Something, about this industry that people actually hate, and I'll talk about this in another video, is the constant learning curve with being a paralegal or really being anywhere, in this industry. You're constantly learning. And if you're not learning and you're just okay with average, okay with status quo, you're not really going to advance in your career. You're not going to level up at that law firm. And you're ultimately dispensable because somebody else is going to be ready to do that job quicker, better, faster than you. And they're probably going to get paid less for it. So just, keep that in mind that you're dispensable. There are a lot of paralegals out there. This is actually quite saturated field, but yet you can't be okay with status quo. You can't be okay with average. You're dispensable if you are. The other horror stories are sexual harassment. I can't tell you how many times I've been sexually harassed in an office in one way, shape, or form, either through a comment or I don't know, just, it happens. I think, during the point where I started to enter my career, It's the late 90s, and it's still very much a male dominated industry. We didn't have, back in the late 90s, early 2000s or whatever, we didn't have Me Too or Enough or any of those things. I think that looking back on things now, if you were to ask me, then I could probably say that, yeah, I'm part of the problem, I guess, because I didn't say anything. I just brushed it off. I allowed it to happen. I think that when you are a paralegal working in a law firm and it is a partner who is doing the harassing, it makes it extremely difficult for you to say anything because really, who are you going to tell? And I'm not making as much money, and I'm not pulling as much money in as what a partner is, and I'm ultimately more dispensable clearly than what that attorney is. So I don't know. It was just it was just really hard. It was kind of like going back to the being let go. When I was going through treatment for my kidneys, I had multiple people come to me and multiple attorneys come to me and say, "Hey, you need to file a complaint against them. You need to file a lawsuit against them. What they did was wrong. They wrongfully terminated you." And it didn't matter if they did, because ultimately I had a job right away. And you don't want to sue somebody, in an industry that you're still trying to work for. And if I did, then I probably wouldn't have been able to continue working in this industry. I don't know. That's, what I say now, and I didn't do it. But, with the sexual harassment thing, it was just like, who the hell was I going to tell at the time? It wasn't anyone. The other issue that you will probably have to deal with in your law firm, and I've certainly dealt with in multiple law firms, is temper tantrums. I can't tell you how many times I have watched attorneys or listened to attorneys have the biggest freaking hissy fits. And I used to make these little like yarn creatures and put them in boxes and give them to people, and they were called fits. And it came with a little note, that take this out when you're ready to throw a fit, and so you could throw your fit across the room. But yeah, they throw fits too. They throw temper tantrums. I mean, they get an opinion that is bad, or they get an email that comes across wrongly in the way that they're portraying it in their head. They're listening to it, and it sucks being in the line fire of those sort of things. And I cannot tell you how many times I have been so incredibly thankful that windows do not open in high rises in downtown Chicago. Because I think that if they did, I think that if they hadn't renovated a lot of those older buildings that had those type of windows, you would see people launching themselves, I think, more outside of windows. Unfortunately, I've seen chairs being thrown up against windows. I've seen desks being overthrown, bookshelves being toppled over, you name it. Couples having fights down hallways. You're in the line of fire no matter what. I mean, you're sitting at your desk and you're hearing somebody down the hall screaming at God knows what, and they swing open their door to their office, and you're like,
Holy crap, what do I do? I'm just gonna look down. I'm gonna look busy. I'm gonna get my butt on the phone.
do anything so that I don't get yelled at. And I think that it sucks for a lot of paralegals who feel like, every day they're coming in walking on eggshells because
Is today the day that they're gonna go nuts?
the fact that you have to worry about that is mentally exhausting. Oh God, it's so exhausting. So exhausting. Okay, so here's a doozy for you. The birth of both of my daughters. So I have a daughter who's going into her senior year in high school. I have a daughter who is going into her freshman year in high school. going to be an empty nester in 4 years. I'm so happy about it. Now, there are some parents who will say, no, baby, please don't leave. I want my babies with me forever. And I love my daughters. Don't get me wrong. They're awesome, but they need to go because I want to go travel. I'm ready to be an empty nester. But anyway, the birth of both of my daughters was scheduled. Okay. And I'm not just talking about when I got pregnant. I'm talking about the actual birth of my daughters. Both of them were scheduled. Like I went to my physician, I went to my OB and I said, I have a trial going on at this time. I really need to have my daughter by this time so that I can take my leave and be back in time for trial. And that's what happened. Both times I scheduled the birth of both my daughters. I literally checked in on my scheduled day. I got a shot of Pitocin. I got an epidural. I had, my daughters, and I was leaving the hospital the next evening, and I was back at work with both of my daughters within 2 weeks. I think that I did that because I was so afraid that I was going to inconvenience the attorneys that I was working for, that I felt like if I scheduled the birth of my daughter and I didn't just spontaneously go into labor, not that I really wanted to do that anyway, honestly. I'm just not one of those people. I'm a planner. I'm a true planner, people. But I didn't want it to be left up to chance like that, and for my employer to worry about what they were going to do because of my responsibilities at work. I had that feeling like I had to schedule it because that's part of the planning process. That's part of me being a planner. That's part of me thinking ahead, 5 steps ahead. One would say, and I probably say now, that that's quite extreme for one's career to do, to literally schedule the birth of your children. But that was my choice at the time because I was, really focused on my career, and I was apparently way too focused on people pleasing at the time, which I've totally backed off on now. Okay, now let's get to it. You're like, what disease does Misty have? What has she been fighting this whole legal career of hers? All right, so here it is. I have a condition called trigeminal neuralgia. It is also known as the suicide disease. That sounds bad, and it is bad.
Trigeminal neuralgia, also known as tic douloureux and the suicide disease, is sometimes described as the most excruciating pain known to humanity. The pain involves the left side of my face and affects the lower face, jaw, around the nose, and around the eye. This intense stabbing electric shock-like pain is caused by irritation of the trigeminal nerve, which sends branches of intense stabbing electric shock-like pain through the lower jaw, cheek, and head.
And it is a really, really rare condition. The pain is just so bad. It can get so horrific that people just can't live with the pain anymore. And the statistics of people who commit suicide as a result of this condition is pretty bad. Living with pain for as long as I have is mentally exhausting. Trigeminal neuralgia is triggered by certain things. I mean, it's not just that pressing on the nerve, it's also triggered by certain things. And my trigger is cold. So I have to be really careful about cold things on my face, on the left side of my face. Living in Chicago was really hard. It got to a point where it was just so hard to stay there during the winters because, it gets so cold there. When you walk outside and your nostril hairs freeze, that crap's not natural. It gets really super cold there. Traveling on the train and walking downtown and walking through downtown when it's so cold, it feels like your face is just gonna rip right off. It's awful. So, I have to be very careful of cold. And so if I can control my environment, then I can control my symptoms. I can control the side effects that I feel from the condition. One of the other triggering factors in trigeminal neuralgia is stress. And so when I filmed that video, about the mental breakdown that I was basically having at the time, um, I was going through that because I had a trigeminal neuralgia attack coupled with a couple of other things a few weeks prior to that. And the whole left side of my face was uncontrollably twitching. And my headaches were just so bad as a result, I think, of what was going on here. And I was crying a lot because I was in a lot of pain. And I do not take any medication for trigeminal neuralgia. The medication that is provided for this condition is anti-seizure medication and pain medication, something like gabapentin and some sort of pain medication. And that's just not a way of life for me. It's not a way to live. I'm most certainly not going to take a medication that impacts the way that I think, that impacts the way that I rationalize and my judgment. And my job requires too much of my mental capacity to be able to take medication like that. I did try, but when I figured out that I couldn't take medication like that, and because I couldn't think when I was taking medication like that, then I had to make the decision of, well, I either don't take the medication and I'm just in pain all of the time, or I do take the medication and I'm not in pain, but I can't really do my job, or do my job well, do my job to the ability that I would do my job. Um, and it was just a double-edged sword, really. So it just came down to control my environment. And if I can control my environment, then I can control my pain for the most part. And it still creeps in there every now and then. But it's a sacrifice. It's a huge sacrifice. It's something that I do for my job. And I do it by choice. I'm not doing it by force. Nobody's telling me that I can't take medication. Nobody's told me that I can't take it. I choose not to take it because I want to remain at, the level that I'm functioning right now today. There is a brain surgery for this condition, which I've chosen not to have, because it's not a guarantee that it will change it. It's not guaranteed that it will fix it. And I'm not going to have brain surgery if it's not a guarantee. There's just way too much risk there for complications. So I'm not going to do it. I think at the end of all this, people want to know, when is it time to break up with your firm or with your attorney? And it kind of is like that. I swear, sometimes it's like the nastiest divorce, but that's your decision. It's up to you. You're the person who knows when enough is enough. And I went through all of these years, dealing with some of the crap that I had, the sexual harassment, the temper tantrums, just scheduling the birth of my children, all of it. I once commuted into work for 2 hours each way to work by train and cab, just to have a job in the Sears Tower. But anyway, only you know when is enough's enough. Only you know when it's time to change. Only you know when it's just so toxic to the point where you can't bear it anymore. If you can't bear it anymore, then, get out. Those are my horror stories. It's been more than 20 years that I've been in this industry. I love it. I hate it, but I stay in it because at the end of the day, it's about the people that I'm helping. And actually, I got an amazing voicemail from a client who just settled this family's case in a wrongful death case. And he left me an amazing voicemail. And if he's watching this, thank you so much for leaving a voicemail. And he was like, I have no idea how it is that you do what you do, but you do it professionally. You know, we knew in our heart of hearts that this, you know, you were the person for us. And that's why I do what I do, because I don't make crap doing what I do, but that's what I do, because it's people like that who are having the worst time and who are going through the most horrible thing ever and losing a loved one. And they just need a little bit of guidance and a little bit of hope and a little bit of reining in sometimes. And I like being that person that does that. So take that for what it's worth. You might be that person who's thinking the very same thing. I do it for the people. I don't do it for the paycheck. I do it for the people. If you are one of those people, thank you for doing it for the people. Thank you for doing everything that you do. And good luck to you and all that you do, because this crazy legal industry needs an amazing paralegal just like you. Thank you guys so much for joining me today in this sort of ranty video. And I'm still happy that you guys continue to come back and watch me. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe below, and I'll see you guys next time. Mwah! Bye for now.